creativity is an interesting paradigm. We always have this argument in the creativity sciences. Is it a specific activity or a general activity? Do you have to be an expert at something to be a great creative? And the answer is, it's a little bit of both. I love it in academic world. We say, is it this or is it this? And we spend 25 years and 42 journals and 52 tenured positions later trying to figure out if that's in fact the case. To the argument is the fact that it's somewhat in the between. Why? Because it's your box of specific knowledge that determines your calibration of where you go. How was it that we came up? Everybody goes, how'd you invent a baked chip? Like it was some sort of magic skill. There are people who literally think that inventors are just a special class of people that just happen to fall out of a tree somewhere. Everett will tell you, I couldn't field a ground ball at 9 years old. He hit him to me for hours. He said, Stamp, I don't know what you're ever going to turn out to be. Well, there it is, okay? The point is, I got really good at just chasing the ground balls, right? So you have to understand in your own world of what skills you have, but they aren't dictates. They're literally guides. We interviewed a number of very well-known inventors, and we looked at their patents. And we then interviewed them, where did the ideas come for your patents? And even Watson and Crick will tell you that their idea for something as fantastically interesting and revolutionary as the structure of DNA was something that they got from looking and lining up the stuff previously in their memory registers and then synthesizing N+1. Nothing just falls out of the sky. If that's the case, then that means all of us are possibly able to do N+1 thinking. It's a matter of understanding what's the difference between memory and memory recall, and how do we use that. When we went to college back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, up until about the 90s, we all went to college because places like Iowa State had wonderful faculty who were the repository of huge boxes of knowledge. And we went there to sit down in front of the seats and just wait for them to bestow it upon us, and we wrote down every golden word. You go, write down words from a professor? Are you kidding me? Just send me the notes, the PowerPoint. I'll go on Google. They have the answers now today before we even do. Why? Because today we live in an information-rich environment. Knowledge is everywhere. I hate to say this on most college campuses, but all the knowledge that you need to know functionally to understand any subject is where? On the internet. It used to be at Iowa State, but now, like all universities, it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. So students know, if I need to know the 4 Ps of marketing, I don't need to go to marketing class to get that. So what has our role changed to be? If no longer do I come to the university as a place of great knowledge repository, what is it now that the universities function? What's our knowledge product? And what's interesting is that brainstorming at that time, when it was invented, functioned as an information network. You bring 10 really smart people from very far away together at one table, you basically made a website. You brought in all kinds of feeds, and now you've got these pieces of information, people share them, now you have brainstorming, and stuff happened. Now everybody knows all the same flat world. There is no difference in terms of what happens in the process. So now we have an information-rich environment, and it has changed how people access information. In fact, 50% of participants today in brainstorming sessions will tell us afterwards in post demonstration or in post discussions that they don't say 50% of the stuff that comes to their mind in a creative session. The interface between knowledge that's in your box, imagination, plus the ability to know how to evaluate it. This is where our younger generation is going to have some real challenges. Why? Because of motivation. We recently went out and talked to people, everything from the World War II generation up and through the Xers, the baby boomers, all the way through the millennials, and we asked them an interesting question. What was your motivation for going to college? I have the 3 top responses, and see if you can't figure out where you set, and when I reveal the answers, you'll probably be generationally consistent. I went to college to learn how to be a lifelong learner. I went to college to learn how to make a lot of money. Or I went to college to learn how to live a life of meaning. Now, as you reflect upon those 3 choices, it's very interesting. Those people who went to college to learn how to learn, raise your hands. Raise your hands. It's okay, raise your hands. The large majority of these are going to be baby boomers. Because we were of that generation. You went to college to learn, and we were seeded with this, be a lifelong learner. Read, memorize, get more skills, more knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge. Still today, that's the best way to sell executive ed programs. Be a lifelong learner. Everybody falls for that line when you're our age, okay? The group of people who said, I want to learn how to make money, will recognize themselves as the kids who went to college in the 80s. That was a big part of the Gen X scene. We have to go to learn how to make a lot of money because that's where it's at. This generation, did you guys recognize the last one pretty well? This generation is asking a lot of questions around learning how to live a life of meaning. Social entrepreneurship is rapidly on the rise today because it is of big importance to understand what does life mean. Now in a society of overabundance, overconsumption, and so much stuff, a lot of my students, as we went around across the country and looked at over 4,000 students, are saying, how do we reach higher? We're already living in the suburbs. We've got 5 cars, 2 garages, a lake home. We go to Lake Okoboji every summer. The question is, what do I want now? And so now the rules have changed quite a bit. And what's interesting is how are they matriculating? If the rules have changed in terms of what's important, how do we then put that into creative context? You know, what's interesting is we talk about the fact in the country we have that old phrase, someone's a mile wide and an inch deep, or a mile deep and an inch wide. I find out, and I'm not judging, I'm observing, because that's what professors do, is that with the millennial group, we've done something very interesting to them. They literally are an inch wide and an inch deep. Why? Because they go from topic to topic to topic in our frenetic media world where nothing has any more stick than about 30 seconds, 60 seconds. And so when they come to create, their boxes don't have a lot in it because they can just go and Google it. So it's not at its access. So to bring a bunch of young people together and put them in a creative group and say, come up with a new idea for Nike tennis shoes, they're not going to do that process the same way anymore. So we've had to learn how to adjust the process of what does creativity do. And we've learned it's about assembling ideas. What this group is incredibly good at is, give me 15 things, I'll take 4 of them and create something really cool mad out of it. That they really like doing. And so we're finding that as the world shifts, so does the process of how you bring things together. What's interesting about leadership in response to the millennial group is they don't want to be managed. They want to be led. Help us do some really cool stuff that matters. Now it becomes a part of, we want to be in the inner circle to understand what makes something tick because they don't have the knowledge structures that we grew up with. They grew up with a finding structure. They literally operate like search engines. What's the topic? Let's go get a bunch of stuff. Let's put it together. Solve. And forgotten. Why? Because it's retrievable. How many of us from the 70s and 80s in college can't stand the thought of losing that one book on our shelf and just like throwing it away, right? We are keepers of knowledge. They are searchers of knowledge. Interesting difference of skill sets and equally as effective, just mediated in different ways. So when we have to get more out of each other, we have to change the way in which we do it.